I never imagined it would happen. But there he was, standing in my living room, eyes filled with something I couldn't read. The man who had always been so distant, so proper, suddenly he was standing close, and I had no idea what he was about to do next. It had been a normal Saturday afternoon. My wife was out running errands, and I was at home alone, enjoying the quiet. I wasn't expecting any visitors. Certainly not my father-in-law. But when the doorbell rang, I got up to answer, expecting it to be a package or a delivery. When I opened the door and saw him standing there, my heart skipped a beat. He had always been the kind of man who kept to himself, serious, professional, almost cold. But today, he was different. His posture was relaxed, his eyes not as stiff and distant as they usually were. And there was something else, something in the air between us that made the usual pleasantries feel awkward. He stepped into the house without waiting for an invitation, his shoes making a soft thud against the wooden floor. "I thought I'd stop by," he said, his voice lower than usual, but still calm. "You and I haven't really had a chance to talk lately. Just thought it would be nice to catch up." The moment he stepped inside, the energy in the room shifted. I could feel my heart race as he moved closer, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to happen. I wasn't prepared for it. Not for what came next. I never expected this to happen. But as he walked into the living room, something inside me told me that nothing would be the same after today. As he made himself comfortable on the sofa, I couldn't shake the feeling that everything had changed in that moment. He had always been a distant figure in my life, my wife's father, a man of few words, who I had always respected but never truly connected with. But today, there was something different about him. He wasn't just here to visit. There was a quiet intensity in his presence, a force I hadn't noticed before. I sat across from him, trying to keep the conversation casual, asking about his work, his latest project. But as he answered, his gaze seemed to linger on me longer than usual, almost as if he were studying me, searching for something. The silence between us felt heavy, each word I said hanging in the air like a fragile thread, waiting to snap. I tried to act normal, to play the role of the son-in-law who was just happy to see his father-in-law. But my heart was pounding, and the way he was looking at me made it hard to breathe. He cleared his throat before speaking again. "You've been busy lately, haven't you?" His voice was low, almost casual, but there was an edge to it, something I couldn't place. "I know your wife has been working a lot, and you've been handling things around the house. But how are you, really?" His question caught me off guard. How was I really? What did he mean by that? My stomach tightened, and I could feel the heat creeping up my neck. I hadn't expected him to dig deeper. I hadn't expected this visit to take such a personal turn. "I'm fine," I said, forcing a smile. "Just keeping busy, you know. Same old stuff." But his eyes never left mine. They were intense, almost searching, and I couldn't figure out what he was looking for. I felt like I was under a microscope, like he was trying to see through me, to uncover something I wasn't ready to face. "You don't have to pretend with me," he said softly, almost as if he were reading my mind. "I can tell when something's off. You've been distant lately." I froze. My throat felt dry. What was he getting at? How did he know I was feeling this way? He had never been this perceptive before. Was he just noticing things, or was he sensing something deeper? I didn't know how to respond. I couldn't tell him the truth. I couldn't tell him that everything had shifted between us, that every time our eyes met, my heart raced a little faster, that I was beginning to see him in a new light. But the way he was looking at me made me feel like he already knew. Like he already understood. "I'm just trying to handle things," I said, my voice unsteady. "Work, life, everything, you know?" He nodded slowly, still watching me, and for a moment, the room felt too small. It was like there was a wall between us, but at the same time, it felt like he could reach through that wall and see everything I was hiding. "I get it," he said, his voice quieter now. "But you don't have to do it alone. You're a part of this family. If you need someone to talk to, well, I'm here." I didn't know why, but his words sent a chill down my spine. It wasn't just the offer of support. It was the way he said it, the way his voice dipped, almost like it carried a deeper meaning. My mind raced as I tried to make sense of what was happening, but the more I thought about it, the less sense it made. He stood up, pacing slowly across the room, and I watched him move, his every step calculated and deliberate. When he turned to face me again, his eyes were softer, more relaxed, but there was still something in them, something that felt like it was pulling me toward him. "You know," he said, pausing for a moment, "I've always admired you. Your strength, your dedication to my daughter. It's rare to see someone like you, someone who truly cares. But I've also seen how you've been struggling. You don't have to carry all of that weight alone. I felt a lump form in my throat. His words were so unexpected, so full of emotion, and they made me feel things I didn't know how to process. Was he just being kind? Or was there something else beneath the surface? I looked down, my hands clenched in my lap. I wanted to say something, to tell him that I appreciated his words, that I wasn't struggling, but that would be a lie. I was struggling, more than he knew. I was struggling with emotions I couldn't control, with feelings I didn't understand. I had always thought of him as distant, a man of few words. But now, in this moment, he didn't feel distant at all. He felt like someone who saw me, someone who was trying to break through the walls I had carefully built around myself. I don't know what to say, I whispered, my voice barely audible. He stepped closer, his hand resting on the back of the couch, his face only inches from mine. You don't have to say anything, he murmured, his voice almost a whisper. But I need you to understand. I'm here for you. I've always been here. The room felt smaller, the air thicker. My heart raced as I met his gaze, the intensity of his eyes almost overwhelming. And then, in that moment, something shifted between us, something I couldn't explain. Something I didn't want to explain. I couldn't look away. His hand was still resting on the couch, so close to mine, and for the first time, I realized, nothing was ever going to be the same. And I didn't know if I was ready for what was coming next. I couldn't breathe. I didn't know what to do. The space between us felt electric, charged with an intensity one couldn't deny, and yet every part of me screamed to push it away, to tell him to leave. But I couldn't. Not when his presence filled the room, when every glance, every slight touch, seemed to pull me in deeper. He was still standing so close to me, his hand resting on the back of the couch, the proximity making it impossible to ignore the tension that had been building all afternoon. His words had been kind, comforting even, but there was something beneath them that lingered, a layer of unspoken desire that neither of us was willing to acknowledge, yet both of us felt. I looked away, trying to steady my breathing, but it was useless. Every time I looked at him, my heart skipped a beat. My stomach churned with a mixture of guilt and something else, something I couldn't identify. My thoughts were a mess. I should have told him to leave. I should have told him this was wrong, he was my father-in-law, for God's sake. But somehow, the usual boundaries had started to blur. And it wasn't just that. It was the way he looked at me, as if he could see through every defense I had built. His eyes were soft, understanding, but there was an edge to them, something raw, something that made me feel exposed. You don't have to say anything, he said, his voice softer now, like he was trying to calm the tension between us. But if something's bothering you, if you need to talk, I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. I didn't know what to say. How could I talk to him about this? About the pull I felt every time he was near me, about the confusion that swirled in my chest whenever our eyes met? How could I admit that I wasn't just uncomfortable with him being close, I was drawn to it? To him? I tried to swallow the lump in my throat, trying to keep my composure. It's a lot, I whispered, barely loud enough for him to hear. I didn't expect things to change like this. He didn't move, didn't try to close the space between us. Instead, he just watched me, his gaze steady, almost searching. What do you mean by that? He asked softly, his voice low, almost like he was coaxing something out of me, something I hadn't said aloud. I hesitated, unsure if I should tell him. Could I tell him? Could I tell him that every time he was near me, every time our eyes met, it felt like everything I thought I knew about myself was slipping away? That the boundary between what was right and what I wanted had started to blur? That, for the first time in years, I was feeling something that felt completely out of my control? I don't know, I said, shaking my head, my hand instinctively running through my hair. It just doesn't feel right. I don't know what I'm feeling, and it scares me. His eyes softened, and he took a slow step closer, closer than I'd ever imagined he would. The air between us seemed to thicken with every inch he moved, and I could feel the heat rising in my chest. I wanted to step back, to create distance, but my body refused to listen. Instead, I stayed there, frozen, as he came closer. I know this isn't easy, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. But I don't want to make things harder. You've always been a good man, and you've been there for my daughter. I respect you for that. I opened my mouth to speak, but the words caught in my throat. He was right. I had always respected him. He had been a father figure in my life for so long. He had never made me feel anything other than respect and admiration. But now, everything had changed. Now, when I looked at him, I saw more than just the stern, distant father-in-law. I saw a man who stirred something deep inside me, something I didn't want to feel, something I couldn't ignore. I don't want to hurt anyone, I said finally, my voice trembling. I don't want to ruin everything. Mark's expression softened, and he took another step forward, his hand now resting gently on my shoulder. The contact was light, but it felt like it was burning through me, like every inch of me was aware of his touch. You're not ruining anything, he said, his voice filled with tenderness. You're just feeling something real. And it's okay to feel it. We all have to face what we feel sooner or later. But you don't have to face it alone. I felt a wave of relief wash over me, but it was fleeting. Because with his words came the truth I had been trying to avoid. I had been running from it for so long, but I couldn't escape it anymore. I couldn't escape him. And I wasn't sure if I wanted to. I swallowed hard, my heart racing. I don't know what to do, I whispered, my voice filled with uncertainty. I don't know what this means, or what I'm supposed to do. He nodded slowly, his hand still resting on my shoulder. You don't have to figure it out all at once, he said, his voice calm and soothing. You just have to be honest with yourself. And with me. His words hung in the air between us, heavy and loaded with meaning. And for the first time in a long time, I realized something important. I couldn't keep running from what I felt. I couldn't keep pretending that I didn't feel drawn to him. That what was happening between us wasn't real. But what did that mean? What was I supposed to do with this knowledge? What was I supposed to do with this connection that I couldn't deny, no matter how hard I tried? I stood there, my mind racing, my heart in my throat, wondering how much longer I could keep denying it. I had already crossed a line, and I couldn't take it back. But the hardest part was just beginning. What was I going to do next? The room was suffocating. It wasn't the heat from the summer day that was making it feel so tight, but the electricity between us, the unspoken tension hanging in the air. Mark's hand was still resting on my shoulder, his touch so light, yet it felt like the weight of it was pressing me down, pulling me closer. I couldn't think straight, couldn't even catch my breath as I stood there, frozen, unsure of what would come next. He didn't say anything at first. He just stood there. His hand still on my shoulder, his thumb gently brushing against my skin. I could feel every movement, every subtle shift of his fingers. And with each passing second, the distance between us shrank, making it impossible to ignore the pull between us. I felt the heat of his body just inches away, and it made my heart race in a way I couldn't control. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he spoke. You're not alone in this, he said, his voice low and steady, his words filled with an unexpected tenderness. Whatever's happening between us, whatever you're feeling, I'm here. I've always been here. I wanted to pull away. I wanted to deny everything. I wanted to scream that this was wrong, that he was my father-in-law, and that this was a line that couldn't be crossed. But I didn't move. I couldn't. His words, his touch, they disarmed me in a way I couldn't explain. And in that moment, I realized I didn't want to pull away. I felt his hand move from my shoulder, slowly down my arm, until his fingers wrapped gently around mine. His touch was so deliberate, so sure, and I felt a jolt of heat rush through me. It wasn't just physical. There was something deeper, something raw and unspoken in the way he held me, like he knew exactly how much I needed this connection. I should have said something, pulled my hand away, said anything to break the silence, but I didn't. I stood there, feeling the warmth of his hand in mine, my pulse quickening with each passing second. And the longer I stood there, the more I realized how badly I didn't want him to let go. You don't have to be afraid, Mark whispered, his voice softer now, the words lingering in the quiet room. I'm not going anywhere. We don't have to figure everything out right now. But we can take it one step at a time. Together. His words hit me harder than I expected. I felt my chest tighten, my breath hitching as his hand remained firmly wrapped around mine. It wasn't just the physical connection, though that alone was enough to leave me reeling, it was the sincerity in his voice, the weight of his offer. He was giving me an out, an opportunity to walk away, to leave everything behind. But part of me didn't want that. Part of me didn't want to walk away from this, from him. I looked down at our hands, the warmth of his fingers still tingling in mine. My mind screamed at me to pull away, to stop this before it went too far. But my body refused to listen. Every part of me wanted to stay in this moment, to let it stretch on longer, to let myself feel this connection that I had never expected, never wanted, but couldn't deny. I don't know what to do, I finally said, my voice barely above a whisper, the weight of my own words pressing down on me. I don't know how to deal with this. With you. Mark's eyes softened, and for the first time, I saw the vulnerability behind his usual stoic exterior. He wasn't just a father-in-law anymore. He wasn't just some distant figure in my life. In that moment, he was someone who understood, who saw me for who I was, and who was offering me something I didn't know I needed until now. You don't have to have all the answers, he said, his thumb gently brushing against my knuckles. You just have to be honest with yourself. And with me. I took a shaky breath, my heart pounding in my chest. I wasn't ready for this. I wasn't ready to admit that I felt something real, something powerful, for him. But I couldn't deny it anymore. The connection between us wasn't just physical, it was deeper, more complex. And no matter how much I tried to push it away, I knew I couldn't run from it any longer. For a moment, I closed my eyes, trying to gather my thoughts, trying to make sense of the storm swirling inside me. But when I opened them again, I looked directly at Mark, and for the first time, I allowed myself to feel what I was feeling. The guilt, the confusion, and the desire, it was all there, all tangled together, but it was mine to own. I don't want to hurt anyone, I whispered, my voice breaking with the weight of the truth. I don't want to hurt my wife. Mark's grip on my hand tightened just slightly, not possessively, but with an understanding that sent another wave of emotion through me. I know, he said softly. But you can't keep hiding from this. You can't keep pretending it's not there. I felt my heart racing, the decision weighing heavily on me. I didn't know what would happen next, but I knew I couldn't keep running from what I felt. For the first time in a long time, I realized I wasn't alone in this. Mark wasn't just someone I had to avoid. He was someone who understood me, someone who was willing to face this with me, no matter what the consequences were. And as I stood there, holding his hand, my heart pounding in my chest, I realized that I had crossed a line, and there was no going back. But the hardest part was still ahead, facing the truth and deciding what to do with it. The days that followed felt like I was walking through a fog. My mind was racing with thoughts of Mark, of the moments we shared, and the way his presence still lingered in the room, even when he wasn't there. I couldn't shake it. I couldn't shake the connection I had with him, and I couldn't stop thinking about the weight of what had happened between us. I didn't know how to process it. I didn't know how to make sense of everything I was feeling. All I knew was that the moment he had touched me, the moment he had looked at me in a way that stripped away every wall I had built, nothing had been the same. I had always been the kind of man who prided himself on knowing what was right and wrong. I had always known where the line was, and I had never crossed it. But now, it felt like that line had disappeared. Now, it felt like I was standing in the middle of a crossroads, unable to decide which path to take. I had avoided Mark for the next few days. I didn't want to see him, didn't want to face him. I had been avoiding my wife too, not knowing what to say to her. How could I explain this? How could I explain the pull I felt toward Mark, the desire that had started to build between us? I couldn't. I couldn't find the words. So, I stayed silent, hoping the tension would somehow fade, hoping the confusion would go away. But it didn't. One evening, after my wife had gone to bed, I found myself sitting alone in the living room, my mind consumed by everything that had happened. The silence was deafening, the weight of it pressing down on me. I hadn't spoken to Mark since the night he had held my hand, since the moment I had crossed a line I couldn't take back. But I couldn't keep avoiding him. I couldn't keep pretending that nothing had changed. I grabbed my phone and stared at it for a few moments, unsure of what to do. I needed to talk to him. I needed to face this. So, with shaking hands, I typed out a simple message, "We need to talk." The moment I sent it, my heart was in my throat. I didn't know what I was hoping for. I didn't know if I was ready for whatever was coming next. But I couldn't live in this uncertainty anymore. I needed answers, even if those answers meant losing everything. Within minutes, my phone buzzed with a reply, "I'm here whenever you're ready." That was all it took. The message felt like an invitation, a subtle push toward a decision I wasn't sure I was ready to make. I took a deep breath and stood up, walking toward the door. My heart was pounding in my chest, my thoughts scattered and confused, but I knew I couldn't keep running from this. As I opened the door and stepped outside, I saw Mark standing there, waiting for me. He wasn't close enough to touch, but his presence was all-consuming. The air around him felt charged, and I could feel my pulse quicken as I approached him. "Hi," I said, my voice barely audible. I felt awkward, unsure of what to say, but there was no going back now. The door had already opened, both literally and metaphorically. Mark smiled, but it wasn't the usual polite smile I was used to. This one was different. It was softer, filled with something else, something I couldn't name. "Hey," he said, his voice calm, but I could hear the tension underneath. "I'm glad you called." I nodded, trying to gather my thoughts. I don't know what to do anymore," I said, my voice shaking. "I don't know what this means, or what it's going to mean for us. For me." Mark's expression softened, and he stepped a little closer, his eyes filled with understanding. I get it, he said, his voice quiet. You're confused. This is all new. But you don't have to go through it alone. I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere. I looked at him, his presence comforting, but also overwhelming. I was standing at the edge of a precipice, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to jump or step back. But in that moment, with him standing so close, offering me his support, I felt the weight of the decision I had to make. I couldn't deny what I felt anymore, couldn't pretend that it wasn't real. But at the same time, I was terrified of the consequences. I don't want to hurt anyone, I whispered, my voice barely audible. I don't want to destroy my family. I don't know how to live with this. Mark stepped closer, placing a hand on my shoulder. You're not destroying anything, he said gently. You're just being honest with yourself. And I'm here for whatever comes next. We'll figure it out together. His words gave me a strange sense of peace, but it was fleeting. The reality of what was happening between us was undeniable, and I couldn't ignore it any longer. But I also knew that facing it meant making decisions I wasn't ready for. I don't know what this means for us, I said, shaking my head. I don't know if I'm ready to let go of my old life. Mark nodded, his eyes filled with something that almost felt like hope. You don't have to let go of everything. You just have to decide what's important. What matters most. And I'll be here, no matter what. I stood there, looking at him, feeling the weight of his words settling in my chest. The decision wasn't going to be easy, and I didn't know what would happen next. But I knew one thing, I couldn't keep running from it. Whatever this was, whatever it meant, it was time to face it. And as I stood there, torn between the life I had built and the truth that was finally coming to light, I knew that I couldn't turn back. But could I move forward without losing everything I cared about? The silence between Mark and me stretched out, thick and heavy, as I tried to process everything that had just happened. Every nerve in my body felt like it was on edge, like the weight of my choices was crashing down on me all at once. I had crossed a line. I had allowed myself to feel something for Mark, something that I shouldn't have, something that would change everything. Mark's eyes never left mine, his gaze steady, but I could see the vulnerability there too, the uncertainty, the fear that maybe he had misread everything. I could feel it in the air between us. He wasn't pushing for anything. He wasn't asking for more than what I was willing to give, and yet I could feel the pull. The pull to go further, to explore whatever this was between us. I can't keep pretending, I finally whispered, my voice barely audible. My throat felt tight, the words heavy as they left my lips. I can't keep pretending that nothing's happening, that this doesn't matter. Mark nodded slowly, his expression softening with understanding. He didn't speak right away, allowing the silence to settle, giving me the space I needed. And in that silence, I realized how much I was holding back, how much I had been trying to deny. But I couldn't deny it anymore. I couldn't deny him. I know, he said, his voice quiet but firm. I know this is hard. But you don't have to do it alone. You don't have to carry this by yourself. I looked at him, my heart pounding in my chest, my emotions a mix of fear, guilt, and longing. I had always seen him as my father-in-law's stern, distant figure. A man I respected, but a man who felt unreachable, untouchable. But now, with his hand still resting on mine, with his eyes so full of emotion, I realized how wrong I had been. How much I had misjudged him. I don't know how to fix this, I said, my voice cracking. I don't know what happens now. I don't know how to undo the damage I've done. Mark's thumb gently brushed across my hand, grounding me, reassuring me in a way I didn't expect. You don't have to fix it all at once. We'll figure it out. Whatever happens, we face it together. But you have to face it, too. You can't keep running from what you feel. I closed my eyes, trying to block out the overwhelming wave of emotions that crashed over me. He was right. I couldn't keep hiding from what I felt. I couldn't keep pretending that the connection between us wasn't real, that the moments we had shared hadn't left an imprint on me. The guilt I felt was suffocating. I had a wife. I had a family. How could I explain this to them? How could I tell them the truth? But the truth was, I was already living in it. I was already deep in the consequences of my actions. Mark wasn't asking for me to abandon my family, to throw my life away. He was just asking for honesty. He was asking for me to face the truth, even if it scared me. I don't know if I can do this, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I don't know if I can face my wife, face everything I've built. But I don't know how to pretend anymore. Mark's face softened, and he leaned in slightly, his hand still holding mine. You don't have to do it all at once. You don't have to figure everything out today. But you have to make a choice. You have to choose what matters most to you. I felt my chest tighten as his words sank in. What mattered most? Was it the life I had with my wife? The family I had built? Or was it the connection I had with Mark, the feelings I couldn't deny, the raw, unspoken bond between us? I didn't have all the answers, but I knew one thing: I couldn't keep living in fear. I couldn't keep hiding from the truth. I had to face it. I need time, I said, my voice shaky but firm. I need time to figure this out. To figure out what I want. What I can live with. Mark nodded, his hand still gently holding mine. Take all the time you need. But just know, I'm here. Whatever happens, we'll face it together. I looked at him, feeling a mixture of relief and terror. I didn't know what would happen next. I didn't know how this story would end. But I knew that the first step was to stop pretending. To face the truth, no matter how messy it was. And for the first time, I didn't feel alone in it. I didn't feel like I had to carry this burden by myself. Mark was here, standing beside me, ready to face whatever came next. The future was uncertain, and the weight of my decisions hung over me like a storm cloud. But one thing was clear: I couldn't go back. Whatever happened next, I had to face it. And for the first time, I wasn't facing it alone. The moment hung in the air, suspended in time. I could feel the weight of everything pressing down on me, my heart racing, my chest tightening with the enormity of what I had just admitted. I couldn't stop thinking about the truth that had finally come to light, that was now out in the open. I had made the choice to face it, to stop pretending that I didn't feel something for Mark. But now that the words had left my mouth, I wasn't sure I was ready for the consequences. The future felt uncertain, like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, staring into the abyss, not knowing which direction to take. Mark didn't speak at first. He just stood there, his hand still resting gently on mine, his gaze never leaving me. I felt exposed, vulnerable, like he could see right through me, all the things I had been hiding, all the things I had been too scared to admit, even to myself. For a moment, the room was silent. It felt as if everything in my life had come to a standstill, the noise of the world outside fading away, leaving just the two of us. And in that silence, I realized just how much I had been avoiding the truth. I had been hiding from myself, hiding from my feelings, afraid of the fallout. But now, there was no turning back. I'm so sorry, I whispered, my voice thick with emotion. I never meant for it to go this far. I never wanted to hurt anyone, especially not you. Mark's eyes softened, and I could see the understanding in them. He didn't look angry. He didn't look disappointed. He just looked at me like he had been waiting for me to say the words, to finally face the reality of what was happening between us. You don't have to apologize, he said gently, his voice calm but filled with sincerity. I knew it wasn't easy for you. But you don't have to carry this guilt anymore. We're both responsible for this, for everything that's happened. But we can't keep pretending it isn't real. I closed my eyes, taking a shaky breath. I didn't know what to say. How could I explain the storm of emotions inside me? How could I explain the guilt, the confusion, the desire I felt for him? You're right, I said softly, my voice barely above a whisper. It's real. And I can't ignore it anymore. Mark's hand moved from mine to gently cup my face, his thumb brushing over my cheek. His touch was soft, but it sent a shock of warmth through my body, a reminder of how close we had become, how much I had been resisting this connection between us. I know this isn't what you expected, he said, his voice full of understanding. But sometimes, we don't get to choose what we feel. And sometimes, what we feel is something we can't walk away from. His words cut through the chaos in my mind. He was right. I hadn't chosen this. I hadn't chosen to feel this way about him, to be drawn to him in a way that was so powerful, so real. But now that I had admitted it, now that I had stopped hiding from it, I knew that I couldn't just walk away. I couldn't ignore the truth anymore. I don't know what this means for my marriage, for my family, I said, my voice cracking with emotion. But I can't keep living in this lie. I can't keep pretending that everything is fine when I know it's not. Mark's eyes softened, his gaze filled with something I couldn't quite place, sympathy, understanding, maybe even a little sadness. You don't have to make a decision right now, he said gently. You don't have to have all the answers. But you have to be honest with yourself. And I think that's the hardest part. You've been living in this confusion for so long, but now you've taken the first step. And that's enough for now. I looked at him, my chest tight with emotion. I didn't know how to fix everything. I didn't know if I could ever make things right with my wife, with my family. But in that moment, I knew that I couldn't go back. I couldn't ignore what I felt for him. And maybe, just maybe, that was the hardest truth of all. You're right, I whispered, my voice barely a breath. I've spent so much time hiding from it, from myself. But I can't do that anymore. I can't keep pretending. Mark stepped closer, his forehead resting against mine, his hand still gently cradling my face. I'm not asking you to make everything right. I'm not asking for anything. But I need you to be honest. Be honest with me, with her, with yourself. The words settled over me like a heavy blanket, comforting and suffocating all at once. I didn't know where this path would lead. I didn't know if I could fix everything I had broken. But I knew one thing, I had to face the consequences. I couldn't keep living in the shadows of my choices. I had to own up to them, no matter how painful it was. Mark's lips brushed against mine then, soft and slow, a gentle reminder of the connection between us, of the bond we had forged. I didn't pull away. I didn't want to. And for the first time, I felt a strange sense of peace wash over me, as though this was where I was supposed to be, even if I didn't have all the answers. As our kiss deepened, I realized that I couldn't deny this any longer. I didn't know what would happen next, but I knew that whatever came, I couldn't face it alone. And for the first time, I was ready to face the consequences of everything I had done. The days that followed felt like I was walking through thick fog, unable to see clearly, unsure of where I was headed. Mark and I had taken a step back after that kiss. He had respected my space, not wanting to push me, but his presence was a constant pull. Every time we crossed paths, I could feel the weight of the unspoken truth between us, lingering in the air, making everything else feel distant and insignificant. I hadn't spoken to my wife since that night, since I had confessed everything to her. The silence between us had been deafening. I knew I couldn't avoid it much longer. I couldn't keep running from the mess I had created. I had to face her, face the reality of the hurt I had caused, and the truth of what I had allowed to happen. But I wasn't ready. I wasn't sure I'd ever be ready. And then one morning, everything came to a head. My wife, after days of avoiding me, finally came to me. She sat down across from me at the kitchen table, her eyes red-rimmed from lack of sleep, and I could see the hurt in them. I had seen it before, but never quite like this. It was raw, jagged, and it cut through me like a blade. "You've been hiding from me," she said, her voice quiet but firm, like she was holding on to her last bit of composure. "And I get it. You've been struggling. But we can't keep pretending this isn't happening. We can't keep avoiding each other." I didn't know what to say. I didn't know how to explain the mess inside me, the guilt and desire tangled together. I didn't know how to tell her that I loved her, but that something had shifted in me that I couldn't control, something I wasn't prepared for. "I'm sorry," I said, my voice shaking. "I never wanted to hurt you. But I couldn't keep lying to myself, to you. I never meant for any of this to happen." She shook her head, tears welling up in her eyes. "I don't know what to believe anymore. How could you do this to me? To us? I don't even recognize you anymore." Her words stung, but they were the truth. I wasn't the same man I had been when we got married. I had changed. And in that change, I had lost sight of everything I thought mattered. "I don't know what to do," I whispered, my heart breaking with every word. "I don't know if I can fix this. I don't know if I can undo what I've done." There was silence between us for a long time, and I could see the weight of her words settling in her expression. I could see the resignation in her eyes, and it was that look, more than anything, that made me realize how much I had hurt her. "I don't know if I can forgive you," she said softly, her voice trembling. "But I think I need to figure out what this is before I can make a decision." I nodded, feeling the weight of everything crushing me. "I'll do whatever it takes to make it right. I can't change the past, but I can try to fix the future." She stood up slowly, her back to me as she walked toward the door. Before she left, she turned around, her gaze still filled with pain. "I don't know if we can fix this, but I'm not ready to give up on us just yet. But you need to figure out what you really want. And if you don't know that, we can't keep going like this." She left without another word, the door closing softly behind her. And I was left standing there, alone with the consequences of my actions, my heart torn between the life I had built and the truth I had finally admitted to myself. I turned to find Mark standing in the doorway, his face etched with concern. He had heard everything. I hadn't realized he had been there, watching the entire confrontation. I felt exposed, raw, vulnerable. "I'm sorry," I said, my voice weak. "I didn't want you to hear that." Mark stepped closer, his expression softening. "You don't need to apologize. I'm here, no matter what happens. But you're going to have to face the truth, and so is she. This isn't easy, but sometimes the hardest things are the ones we have to go through." I nodded slowly, feeling the weight of his words. He was right. I had to face the truth. I couldn't keep running from it. I couldn't keep hiding behind the lies I had told myself. The next few days were a blur, filled with moments of uncertainty and quiet reflection. I didn't know what would happen next. I didn't know if my wife would be able to forgive me. I didn't know if I would lose everything. But I knew one thing: I couldn't continue to live in this state of confusion. I had to face the consequences, no matter how painful. And then, in the quiet after the storm, I realized that maybe, just maybe, this was a chance for something new. A chance to rebuild, to face the truth, and to make choices that would lead me toward a future I could be proud of, no matter how difficult the road ahead would be. As the days passed, I couldn't help but wonder, was this the end of everything I had known? Or was this just the beginning of something new, something I had never expected but needed more than anything?